Canteen is open for business. Hey, everyone. I got my drink, an actual drink this time, in my Baker's Canyon mug.
Wait, is there a drink in there?
Yeah, it's CVS. So
okay.
Beer.
Gotcha.
But, they haven't sponsored us yet either. I'm going to have so many sponsors once this podcast goes mainstream. We're going to have RX Sugar. We're going to have...
Because no one else sponsors them.
Huh?
No one else wants them as a sponsor. No one else drinks it.
That's okay, because if I get free Zevia, that's going to save me like $30 a month or something. Maybe more than that.
Wow.
I don't know how much I buy. I buy a lot of Zevia. That's like the only tasty beverage I buy and consume. And it's all worth it, every single can. And I drink like 10 a day. So hopefully Zevia is not poisoning me in the background. But because but what's not poisoning you in the background?
Yeah.
All right. I'm Drake. I'm a co-pastor with Bryan, Trinity Reformed Church, Las Vegas. 4 kids, big fish tank, pictures forthcoming. And my lemon tree is not doing as well as it was before. I don't know if maybe that thorny plant sucked too many nutrients out. But anyway, who are you?
My name is Brian Hodge, and I am a pastor at Trinity Reformed Church in Las Vegas, along with Drake. I also have a fish tank. I do not have a lemon tree, but we are working on building a pond right now to cultivate good Christian culture. I don't know how it
mosquitoes.
Right. Well, Christian culture is about suffering, true Christian culture, and
right.
Mosquitoes will bring suffering. So
we're going to make sure all the kids get malaria and really suffer hard. Yeah. All right. Well, you know how you train your toddlers, you train your children, you potty train them, and they're doing such a great job. You're like, yes, they're asking to go to the bathroom, and then something crazy happens. They have a bad dream, or another child comes into the picture and they start regressing, right? And they start like, what's wrong? I thought they were potty trained. Well, we've regressed. We're back to the duo. April was back last week. Things looked better, right? We got our guardrails back, and now here we are, Brian and I again. But that's because obviously April is still, 1, recovering, but 2, she's got 4 company in there, so she's quite a busy mama. So she's not going to be as available, and so it's going to be a while before it gets back to the norm. So we're going to regress. We're going to still wear diapers for a little bit.
It'll be back.
We'll get back to the potty training later. But the topic today, we're going to talk about this idea of Christian Burroughs. We're going to address a video. We're going to address a video by, is it Redeemer Church? What's their church called?
I don't know. I think it is. Is it Redeemer? I'm not sure.
That might be Redeemer Church. It's Brian Suave. It's Suave, I think. And Eric Kahn and some other guys. It's the church up in Ogden, Utah. They've been doing this project for a long time. We've addressed Brian Suave before in their podcast Bright Hearth, which is a generically basically a really good podcast. It has a lot of good things. We would recommend people to listen to some of the podcasts. We've addressed some of the inconsistencies. And this video is another what we would consider an inconsistency, more broadly, right? And more probably, there's more consequences from this video of what they're trying to do or been trying to do than maybe the other one. Although the other one was birth control, so that obviously has pretty bad implications too. But it's talking about their project up in Ogden, Utah, and what they're trying to do, and how they're kind of mixing, I guess, the church life with living in a nation, or I guess living in the United States in particular. So what's the best way to operate? What's the best way to be a church today in America with all these things going on? And the title of the video is what? In defense. What's the title of the video again?
Building Christian Burroughs in defense of monocultures.
Yeah. So a lot of triggering words there. You see Christian, you kind of assume, oh, I know what that is. He's a pastor. I guess that's a church. So the question would be, what does he mean by building? What's a burrow? What's a Christian burrow? Most people have probably never heard of the term burrow. And then he's going to tag on in defense of Christian monoculture. And of course, that's a triggering term. That's going to need a lot of explanation. What do you mean monoculture? And this video is going to attempt to do that. And there's a lot of really good things in this video. I'll put off the bat. We don't consider Brian Souvé an enemy or anything like that. He is a Christian. We want to lovingly rebuke the false ideas I think that they have, and they truly believe them. I mean, they're not right. This is anyone doing really anything, good or bad. They truly believe in what they're doing. So we want to, give a loving pushback and say, I think you're mixing categories here, and the outcome is problematic. And it's not. It doesn't have apostolicity. There's no apostolic, I think, founding to this. It's not something you would find in Scripture that would stand the test of time. It's something that's just relevant today. It's not something that's going to really stay relevant, I think, in the future. So yeah, we're going to address this video and do a little commentary.
Well, and maybe we'll clarify, not that they'll ever watch this or anything, but like, if they were to watch it, or someone who does watch that and then watches us, maybe we'll possibly clarify how they should think about these things a little bit better. I don't know, but something at least to make it more biblical, because right now it's to me, it's an incoherent mess. Which is why you'll watch one video and they'll say one thing, and then you watch another and it's like, okay, well, that contradicts what you said in that one. Because it's just, I just don't think they have it worked out. I think they know what they want to do in terms of, we want to impact the culture and change the culture and have a Christian, Burrough, and eventually span out from there or whatever, into a Christian nation and all that sort of thing. But I don't think they're quite understanding what the biblical model is, and therefore what the model of the church should be and its focus and all of that. So
foundationally, it's important when we go into this, their eschatology is post-mill. So foundationally, they do believe that Christ is ruling through the church. It's not that Christ is ruling the church. Christ is ruling he's ruling the church. He's ruling everything. But Christ's actual material, physical reign is through the church. And that's important because when we look at how they define Borroughs and who they're going to connect it to, the militaristic framing is going to make sense. So
yeah, the what we would view as the not yet, they think is already, even though they don't think it's fully realized, but they think let's put it this way, everything that you would have in the not yet is present, but only maybe in seed form, and so it has to grow into the larger plant. Whereas we would argue is that that's not true. Only the spiritual is what you have in fullness now, and you're waiting for the rest of the not yet. There's not a not yet in seed form, so which means the physical world and your physical body and the physical domination of Christ over the nations has not yet come.
I always like to put it, the post-mill looks at the already. If the already and not yet were an apple, the already is the flesh, the not yet is the peel.
Yeah.
It's like, hold on, I thought it was the other way around. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so just to pause there, where we go, I forgot where we were.
You're pulling up the video and you're going to start with the problem.
Yep.
Their production value for these videos, their ability to communicate is very good.
Yeah, I always want to ask people, like, what cameras are you using? Like, how do you, I don't know.
It's got to be like what I'm using. It's really, I think they have, again, this is part of their building up. Well, they're going to explain, I think, why they have these talents behind them. But I mean, I have this camera. It really just goes on to, do you have people that are focusing on aesthetics and, the background itself is supporting his argument, his story, the vibe he wants to set. I mean, they know what they're doing, both in the communicative speech and the aesthetics speech as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that I don't know if they source these out for editing or if they have a good editor there or what have you or whatever. I mean, obviously we don't really edit.
Oh yeah,
We
have an editor.
edit, but not really. I mean, we don't really like. It's not making the videos like higher quality looking videos, right? That's not what our editor does. He just edits stuff out that we're like, we should probably not edit that out.
He makes it somewhat watchable.
Yeah, right.
The original, you'd be like, I can't stand. What is this?
Right, it's incoherent.
Yeah.
Politicians repeat the slogan, "America is a nation of immigrants." For example, in 2023, Yvette Clarke, representing New York's 9th District.
Yeah.
We already have the meat of like he's already laid the groundwork of what we're talking about. When you hear America, there is no difference between America and the church. There is no difference between the local what the local body is, America is, and what he's just said in that little statement. And he's going to flesh that out.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I just want to point out that statement is true. America is a nation of immigrants. Like, no matter how you slice it, that is true. So just, any pushback on that, it would be like, well, it is what it is. So now what are we supposed to as Christians do with it? I guess,
Called for immigration reform, by which she meant more expansive immigration, on the basis that America is a nation of immigrants founded by immigrants. The phrase seems to have taken off thanks to a book by John F. Kennedy, A Nation of Immigrants, in the late 1950s, which then exploded in discussions about race during and after the Civil Rights Amendment of 1964. But when you look at America's founding, this storyline fails to hold the water it was intended to carry. In point of fact, America was founded predominantly as a nation of Northern and Western Europeans who crossed the Atlantic Ocean to become a part of the white colonial expansion of their mother countries. For example, in the 1790 census, America's population of roughly 3.9 million was comprised of 3.2 million whites.
I just want to point out that what he just said there did not contradict the statement. All he was like, well, wait a minute, that's not true, because America was, it was white European immigrants. It's like, okay, but that still makes it a nation of immigrants.
Well, he couches it in the norm. He couches it in the norm of the day, which is the following the expansion of their mother empire, their mother European expansive.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't know if I would even that characterization of why everyone came to America is not quite accurate either. I mean, it just depends on how far back you're going. Are you talking about, like, with the Spanish sending out people to America? Are you talking about the Puritans who come for a very different reason? Like, I don't know if I would agree with the characterization, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because even the American Indian, the Native American is not really native. I mean, they migrated from Asia, right? And then we're all immigrants from different European countries. And so the point of America being a nation of immigrants or whatever is just the idea that basically any other immigrants that come are just continuing what we did, in the sense that it's not their native land, and they've come here to expand. Many of them have come to expand, their own cultures in this land. Some have come to actually join the European culture or whatever of the predominantly, white Americas or whatever. But ultimately the idea is that it is a nation of immigrants either way. And because of that, you have multiple cultures coming in. And I would argue, even from Europe, let's say no other culture was met when they came, and no other culture is coming up now or whatever, other than like white American Europeans. You've got like a billion cultures going on with that. And we'll talk more about this or whatever. But I think culture is, I don't think you can have a monoculture. I actually think that's a misunderstanding of what's going on. Now, I do think you can have a monoculture when it comes to certain things.
Don't jump too far.
Okay.
Let me just sum up, I think, the already illogical premise here. The illogical premise is because there's some kind of normative idea of expansion in white Europe that happens to come to the Americas, does not then negate the idea that this nation is somehow not built on immigrants. That because it was naturally expanding, that the whites aren't immigrating or alien to a particular land. Everyone's alien. Abraham was alien to Canaan. It's just the way it goes. So anyway.
Well, and again, it's not everyone's coming from expansion. A lot of people are fleeing. You know, the Puritans in particular, it's not just like, oh, we want to expand our kingdom. It's like some of them maybe.
Well, you notice, I think there is a connection with the slow disintegration of the Holy Roman Empire and this expansionism.
Right.
Yeah.
Of those, almost 90% were English, Welsh, Scottish, or Irish. Germans were 9%, Dutch 3%, French 2%, and Swedish less than 1/4%. The remainder, excluding Native Americans, were black slaves who numbered just shy of 900,000. Even as late as 1940, the U.S. population was about 90% white European
immigrants.
lineage. Today, the monoculture of white
how they categorize that?
Well, they can't be immigrants. Well, because they weren't expanding their empire,
right? Or is it because they're like attached to the owner that then therefore they are not immigrants? See, this is a problem because if they're not immigrants, then
yeah,
okay.
Anglo-Saxon Protestant (WASP) has been intentionally eroded.
Wow.
As of 2025, the nation has grown to almost 360 million, with the fastest growing ethnicities being Asian and Hispanic. Those groups make up about 33% of the U.S. population currently, but are expected to make up 40% by 2060. Whites are in steep demographic decline, making up about 57% of the current population, but are expected to drop to 40% by 2060. Blacks have grown by about 4%. Meanwhile, it's projected that foreign-born individuals will soon be 20% of the population by 2060.
Okay, so I that's not all of it, obviously, but it's hard for me to get through this. Not because, you know, I don't want people to think I'm emoting over the issue. I'm not. If I thought that this was logical, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's great or whatever. Yeah. But when you're confusing skin color with culture, it rubs me the wrong way. Who cares whether whites, like, do you really care if your kids are like tanner than you are? Who cares? Like, it's the culture you want your kids to have. Ultimately, this almost stems from the idea that we're different things. And maybe that's part of their ideology. Maybe they think there are different people groups or whatever. And I have to, like, here's where I would disagree with Vodi Bakum even, where he was like, oh, well, God, you know, he made all these different colors of people because he wanted, like, you know, the flowers in the garden and all that. And it's like, well, I mean, you could say ultimately that God kind of made it through environmental adaptation or whatever, but we're all one thing. We're all actually one. Like, we're all one people who have darker tans or lighter tans than the other. That's all it is. You have environmental adaptation. There's adaptations that have occurred depending on where people have basically lived for centuries and even thousands of years and all that sort of thing. And so you have differences in looks, but cultures are things to where you can have like a million cultures within one, like, race, quote unquote, of people. And so they're not the same thing. And so to start out the idea, because this whole thing is going to be about multiculturalism, how it's bad and all that sort of thing, how we need to build monoculture and whatnot. And the problem is like, if you confuse even that, then, like, I have a hard time listening to you in terms of, do you really understand everything else? Like, all the stuff about white people, it's like, okay, but does that mean white culture is diminishing? Because there's no such thing as white culture. There's literally a gazillion white cultures because culture is not a part of someone's color, and it really isn't. Like I don't see how color affects it. If it did, then you should have some sort of homogeneity between African cultures, Jamaican cultures of Black people, and American cultures of Black people, and they're completely different. And the same thing among Hispanics, and the same thing among whites. They should all look. There should be elements that are exactly the same that they don't share with the other racial groups. And I don't. There isn't anything.
Yeah. So, in thinking through this, I'm trying to think of like, okay, what similarity then would you need to conclude about, let's say, the geographic white and the geographic Black or Hispanic? And I guess it would have to be, and this kind of even breaks down too, but he's attaching it to like colonial Holy Roman Empire, Europe. So I guess that white culture is Christian culture. What came over here is the proper socio-economic. There's obviously some discontinuity with sin, so it's not like the perfect Christian culture, but it is like the best culture you could have had at the time, or it's a better than anything else.
Well, so, yeah, like, I mean, you'd have to. He'd have to prove that point, but I mean,
well, right, but that's the idea. I think that's the idea, though, right? That those that came are bringing with them this Christian culture, which ultimately everyone's going to argue is what America is founded on, the values that they brought over. And then these competing cultures are at war or eroding this better way that was brought over. So through these immigrants of different cultures that weren't getting Christianity, I guess, as right as Europe, are eroding,
or weren't Christian at all, I guess,
or weren't Christian at all. Like you think of the Aztecs that are literally sacrificed children that the conquistadors wipe out, which is a good thing,
right? Yeah,
right. So are other cultures like? Should we view them as like the Aztecs, and we let the Aztecs, instead of wiping out their wickedness, we kind of let them cohabitate? That's how I see him framing these different cultures.
Yeah, and I almost think that they have the idea, because I actually would push back and say that I think it's a misunderstanding. There wasn't one white culture that came over. And if I were to break them down, if I were to actually generalize, and just make them two, the two cultures that came over were the culture of, I'd say, Christianity.
Yep.
And the Enlightenment.
Yes.
And the one that won was the Enlightenment.
Yes.
And we had a syncretism of the two for a while, but it was a syncretism, not Christianity. Just like there was a syncretism throughout, Christendom, which really wasn't Christendom. It really was just this syncretistic, medieval European thing that was made up, and it had some Christian influences in it, and a lot of Christian language, and the Bible was used and all that sort of thing. And then there were Christians in it, obviously.
Yeah.
But the problem is that which one are we talking about expansion then? It has nothing to do with people being white, because a bunch of white people brought over what, in my mind, is one of the worst religious views in all of history, that led to basically is leading to the ultimate destruction of a people faster than any other pagan view I've seen in the world. It is so destructive. It boils the human down to basically just his imagination of what he wants, which destroys everything about him and everyone around him. And so for me, I'm kind of like, okay, well, if you want to say that one culture that was brought in by, the Europeans, which was Christian culture, and you want to kind of regain that, that's fine. You can argue that. I would argue that it's not necessary, but I mean, ultimately, if you're arguing, that's fine. But to phrase it though, well, the white people, all the white people had good culture or better culture.
They happen to get it right, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm sorry, that's not true. They had horrible culture, and they brought in the seed they planted through bringing over Enlightenment ideas into the American, nation or whatever, has now started to bloom in terms of its fruit, and it has laid destruction to its children. So I
Well,
don't
again,
want to hear this garbage about, oh, let's regain the culture of the European expansion and all that sort of nonsense.
right. Well, I think his argument is already fallen flat. The fact that he's mentioning chattel slavery, that those people brought over slaves that in a way that the Bible would both condemn those people to death for stealing,
execute them. Yeah, yep.
for man stealing,
Yeah.
and that a nation again is established, a quote unquote Christian nation by the the culture that has Christianity the right, is already problematic. Because honestly, if we look at if we look at early Christianity, it was African Christianity that got it right. That was much more the model of
Right.
actual Christianity, right? So you had like Ethiopia and the kingdom,
because they were actually suffering, right? They were
actually right, and you had in like what like in Persia and stuff, like the church over there, and how they're suffering, and so like if I want to compare those two cultures, those two Christian cultures, if I compared white Christian culture of the 15th, 16th, even the 14th centuries, and the Christian culture of the first, second, third, probably up to Islam, like the sixth, until Islam became a power.
Yeah,
they would say you guys are whacked. They would probably condemn and excommunicate many, right? They'd be like, this is not a Christian culture. What do you guys do? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
it wouldn't make any sense. So it's weird to then prop up this idea that what was brought over was superior, and always, and it's something that we have to hold on to. It's something that we have to hold on to, and that's the other thing. It's like we're losing something. What are we losing?
Yeah.
He hasn't really argued what we're losing yet, but he's building that argument right now.
Yeah, well, what he's ultimately, and I don't even know if they ever identify this, but ultimately, what I think has happened is that because of the false religion that the white people brought over, it has dismantled not just Christianity, which it was built to dismantle, because it's for the first time in the world you have a religion constructed to specifically counter Christianity. So the worldview that basically I would argue holds everything together. And so because of that, it erodes not just Christianity, but because Christianity is reality, it's the true worldview, it erodes all natural law with it. It erodes all like natural ethics and everything, so that people like don't even know there's a gender anymore, and you can just be anything, and just all that. Like, it erodes reality because it erodes the actual religion. And the white people are the people who did that. That was the white Europeans who brought that to deconstruct not just Christianity, but reality itself. Like, I can adopt a pagan religion, and because that pagan religion is still going to assume natural law half the time, at least, even though I'm not believing the truth of full reality of Christianity, my culture can still be held together, and people are not just like committing intellectual, emotional, and physical suicide because they can't figure out, what they are. But what we brought in was worse. So I just push back against this whole idea that, oh man, it's really the fault of all these different cultures that have come in that have eroded, what we should be. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's not true. We did this. It's an apostate religion that we brought over. And I say we as in white people, that white people brought in. I don't assign myself with them. I think I'm more of the Puritans, but even the Puritans kind of adopted some presuppositions of the Enlightenment that it just infested itself so much in our culture. And that's what it's eroding us, not multiculturalism. That is a misunderstanding of what's going on.
Now, here's where this argument does fit in, and this is where I think the confusion is. Let's remove the America, and let's insert the church. Instead of him saying, we have this problem in America. Let's switch it and say we have this problem in the church. Now, and also let's jettison this racial idea, but let's insert in its place this idea of multiculturalism, and let's relabel that and say like different ethics or different thoughts on God, different orthodoxies, right?
Yeah.
Now
that's
we
more
have
pluralism.
Oh yeah, now we have pluralism. Now we have something I can grab onto and say, to your like what Brian will bring up later and what you've already mentioned, this kind of monoculturalism. Because I do believe, like in the church, there is a monoculturalism. It's not what they're going to define. Monoculturalism in the church is love. Everything is love. There is nothing other than that. So like
because we're mono-religious, right? It's
mono-religious.
That's probably not even a word, but the idea like that we have a singularity of religion.
Yeah.
And so but here's the thing. I think it's very clear that they're using culture to refer to preferences.
That's exactly what they're using.
Yeah.
And they'll define it here in a little bit.
Right. And that's where I would push back. I would actually say there's a problem there in terms of not understanding what the church is, what the larger culture is, and even understanding what a household is. Because if you understand what a household is, you understand what the others are. But we can talk about that as we kind of go on.
As the racial profile of America has changed, so have the values driving its now highly pluralistic culture. You may wonder what happened.
Yeah, but notice how he ties the two together there. As the racial diversity, so the cultural diversity. And it's like that's not one, it's not the issue, and two, it's not. Those aren't necessarily tied together. They can be, but they're not necessarily.
You may wonder what happened. It seems there was a concerted effort after World War II to erode the WASP stronghold.
Okay, this is where he goes into the whole diatribe about the Jews and all that stuff. So again, this is like conspiracy theory stuff that even if it was true, which I don't think it is, I'm sure it's true on some people's. I'm sure. Look, there are people who want to like.
There are bad Jews.
Subvert, okay? Yeah, there are all sorts of bad people, and there are all
sorts
of bad Jewish people.
A bad dude. Yeah,
yeah. There are bad black people, and there are bad white people, and there are bad people, and they try to subvert good things and all of that. That's fine. It's not the church's job to figure out some sort of covert plan from someone else or whatever, and get us distracted from our mission, which is to fill up the world to come with disciples of Christ. Like that's our mission. And unfortunately, even my saying that it just shows we've got completely different missions based on completely different, I would say not even eschatologies, but eschatologies in terms of what is important in your eschatology. So if what's important is the millennium in your eschatology, then you're going to be shooting for the millennium. But if what's important is the eternal state, which I mean, I don't know what to say other than duh. Obviously, that should be the more important. Then your mission should be based on the eternal, not the temporary. And I don't care how much that temporary even reflects the eternal. It's still not the eternal. It's not the immortal thing. It's not the thing that lasts forever, even in the millennium, because there's a new heavens, new earth after that, not before it. And so the problem is that their mission is now. So if your mission is now and what you need to do is to reform the world you're in, then your focus is not going to be about filling up the world to come with the disciples of Christ. Your focus is going to be on changing this current world as you're in. And so it's going to be, okay, how do I change this borough into a Christian borough? Rather than how do I disciple, how do I preach the gospel and disciple people for Christ, which by the way was actually the command given by Christ when he left. Not transform your boroughs. It was literally go into the nations and make disciples. And he tells you how to do that. It's not a mystery. It's not, oh, well, I am making disciples by creating culture. It's like, no. He said to baptize them. This is what discipleship is: baptizing them and teaching them all that Christ commanded. Not your personal preferences, not what you think is logical and what leads to thriving in this world. What leads to thriving in this world is the devil's methods, which, I think we'll talk about a little later, but I think that's problematic because a lot of what they argue here is very pragmatic and utilitarian. And it's like, well, if it works, then this is what's good. And if it doesn't work, well, it's not good. It's not good. And that's why you need, leaders like this work and leaders like this don't work. And it's like, what do you mean work? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like people like them and you have big crowd? I don't get it. What do you mean? It's very, I think, confounded. And again, some of this might be brought up. We actually had a discussion with them and talked it over, but it's hard to understand what they're trying to get at.
Well, there's this the idea that because Christ is ruling through the church, then the systems of the world are, I guess, everything is like kind of amoral. So like God has set up these things from the beginning, right? This is the argument of like any Christian nationalist or either if you're all mill Christian nationalist, post mill Baptist, whatever. That in the beginning, God established these governmental entities that are cultural, right, and all this stuff, and that had nothing to do with the fall, right? So this Noachic covenant of governments and ruling over those who would want to murder, right, and making sure that people aren't doing what they're not supposed to do. That this is something that was already done in the beginning.
Yeah, so when Christ, if they didn't fall, all the nations would have been separated anyway into separate nations and distinct nations. Said no verse anywhere.
Right. And there's going to be kings, there's going to be rulers, there's going to be the elite, there's going to be the ones that have power, the ones that don't. But no one would like envy the power, and no one would rule wickedly. So this was kind of how it was always supposed to be. So when Christ comes and he not only promises a new world that's going to be remade and remove the systems that are in place, now it is the church's job to bring back what was always supposed to be. So we're supposed to have these cultures, we're supposed to have these governments, we're supposed to have these Christian princes. And one of the church's jobs then is, instead of baptizing like we just talked about and making disciples, it is finding leaders that eventually, as Christianity takes over, will be able to do these particular jobs that we're going to have in the new heavens and new earth anyway. And
go ahead.
Well, as I say, part of me is like, okay, well, let's talk about, why do you think like everything you see here is the way God made it from the beginning? Like, I think there's a lot more going on that is not amoral, that is ripe and just straight up a system of Satan that will just go away.
Well, and I think if, again, this goes back to the idea that if you think, look, I used to say to Christians all the time, if one thing is clear in the New Testament, it's that Christianity is not Islam, and that
Mormonism.
Yeah,
it's not Mormonism.
Christ is not taking over the physical world through his followers. That happens in Islam and Mormonism and all sorts of cults. But that's not what Christ is doing. His followers are not fighting to take over the world. He accomplishes that at his coming, literally 1 Corinthians 15. Then comes the end, when he hands the kingdom over to the Father, and he subjects all rule. He actually abolishes all rule and authority, meaning all other rule and authority, and he himself establishes himself as the authority over the earth. He doesn't do it through the followers. The thing that he's working through us and doing through us is the spiritual reformation, the regeneration. As we preach the word, the Spirit then regenerates men. We're participating in this work that actually gets people into the world once he does come and overthrow all governments. But until then, he's not doing it through us. So this whole idea that he's ruling right now and we just need to take these kingdoms that already belong to him is a completely misunderstanding of the biblical model that sets out for Christians. Otherwise, his people, as Jesus himself says, should be fighting, that he might not be delivered up. Literally, right. James should have been like, he should have had a sword instead of let that sword come against his neck, because who is Herod to take his life? Some lowly king. He's a son of God, united to the king, the emperor of all the world. You don't have any authority over me. Why are we told to submit to the Roman government? That doesn't make any sense. I'm a son of God. I'm a son of the emperor, and I'm united to the emperor, so that makes me the emperor. I don't need to be subject to anyone else, not to a pagan who's not united to him. But if I'm in the devil's world and God still recognizes the devil as an authority, and literally it says that he's given authority and that the beast under him is given authority to both persecute and kill Christians, then I understand.
That's only until 70 AD, Brian.
Yeah, well, that's the problem then, right? So then you have these warped preterist interpretations of Revelation, because that can't be talking about our world. No. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, it is talking about your world. The devil is the god of this world, the prince of the power of the air. He's the one who rules. He's the ruler of the present age. And so if I'm in his world, then I actually do need to figure out, okay, how do I communicate the best way the Christian message without upheaving authority, which frankly even represents God, even if it's wicked authority? How do I do that? Well, it would mean that I can preach the gospel because I need to obey God rather than man. But there's nothing causing me to sin in submitting to government when it wants to kill me. So I can put my neck out and have it take it off, because I'm not the emperor. Because Jesus is not the emperor of this world. He is the emperor of the world to come. And he currently is ruling Israel. That is the church. And yes, he's ruling sovereignly as God is ruling, but not as a mediatorial king. And so this is so important to understand. Yeah. These guys, clearly, they've been, completely saturated with this, I think, overly simplistic, really poor eisegetical theology, which believes that Jesus is like the universal mediatorial king right now.
Yeah.
And therefore, I need to take over my borough. That's where I start. That's just where we start.
Well, yeah. So, I don't know if we even define what a borough is initially. Sorry if we didn't.
Well, he defines it as what a fortress and a stronghold.
Yeah. Right. It's a fortress that already is Christian. It's not like becoming Christian. Yeah. So because he bases it off Alfred the Great, who designs these areas that people can go to in case there's marauders or anything like that. And no one is more than 20 miles or a day's journey from a borough. So anyone in his kingdom can go find protection in these areas that are already Christian. And there's, already Christian in Suve's idea, but in the actual historical idea was as the UK is, Alfred is still gaining his superiority, his rule superiority. He's expanding these boroughs so his people are protected, and of course, as Christians, we're supposed to be little fortresses that people can go to. And militaristically, Alfred the Great is supposed to be Christ, right? So now there's we're supposed to be these militaristic boroughs that are expanding the reign of Alfred the Great.
Yeah.
Or Christ, right? So you see the connection there. So go out and create Christian boroughs. Be a little area that people a little Christian oasis where people can go to. And in one sense, I want to be amen to being a Christian oasis. We should be an oasis. That is biblical.
Amen to Alfred, who's a king, not a pastor.
Providing
safe spaces for his people.
Right. But
when they're being attacked by Danes, I mean, give me a break.
Right. Well, the problem is like, look, Alfred the Great's not the first one to do this. This is okay. So, the apostles could have been like, hey, go make little Borroughs so, we can get this kingdom off and going. So we can stop being persecuted because, we got that, times of the essence because we think Christ is coming back pretty quick. So we got to take over this world like tomorrow. But again, this is important too. This is something that the church has been dealing with really since probably like Marcion, the whole Marcion idea, because initially, and this is indisputable, the church thought Christ was coming very soon, very soon. Many thought they were not going to die before that happened.
It's very clear. Paul thinks he's coming in his lifetime. Right. Peter thinks he's coming in his lifetime.
Yeah. So there is a principle of always live in imminency.
Yeah.
Of Christ, right? And then as time goes on, right, as the Holy Spirit is speaking through men and there's the scriptures being written down, the apostles are getting older and they die. And then you have like the apostolic age or the post-apostolic age, the apostolic fathers and the patristics. The church starts realizing it might be a while. Maybe like the apostles are dead. Now what? Now it's like, how do we know who's speaking from the Spirit and who's speaking what they want? Right now they got to like start looking back at Sola Scriptura. This is where Sola Scriptura comes from. Yeah. Thank you, Marcion, for forcing the church to be like, no, you're whacked out, or the Manichaeans or anyone else or the Montanists to be like, no, you're not the Paraclete. We already have the writings from the Paraclete. Yeah. But now it's like, okay, how do we live as we wait?
Right.
And so you go from like the second century, and that's kind of been like the debate even today. And now we're having it in 2025.
But I feel even in the first century, right, they feel this to where, because it almost seems like not only did they believe Christ was going to come in their lifetime, but they believed he was going to come like maybe within a year.
Yes.
Or maybe 2 years or maybe 3 years, or just basically enough time to tell all of Israel and as much of the Roman Empire as they possibly could about this so they could save everyone, who would believe. But largely he was going to come back real quick. And then you see this in the writings of both Paul and Peter, to where when he doesn't come back right away, they're kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is how you live then.
Yeah.
Everybody grab a sword and take over the Roman Empire. No, everybody get in your own burrows and live quietly.
Yeah.
Be quiet.
Be quiet.
Live a quiet and peaceful life as you're waiting. Why? Because it has nothing to do with transforming culture. It has everything to do with making disciples, and therefore the culture of the church, that is I'd say the meta culture of the church, as you said, is one of love. So it's not, we don't have to speculate like, oh, well, what do we do now because it's later? That was happening even in the time of the New Testament, and we get the command of the apostles. What are we supposed to do? It's not go hold a rally down at the courthouse because you didn't like a decision made in public policy that might be against Christians. It's none of that. Instead, it's live a quiet and peaceful life so that when you are falsely accused, it will be a false accusation. When you're accused of insurrection and rebellion and being a rebellious person, it won't have any weight to it. Now it'll be, well, if you're going to be talking about like, yeah, we're going to create our own Christian Burroughs and have our own little subcultures that are like, against your culture and all that sort of thing. Well, again, it depends on what you mean by that. But if it's so antagonistic and insubordinate to larger culture, then I think you're going to be counterproductive toward what the New Testament wants you to do. Now, I get it that like if let's say their whole town becomes Christian and their town is just the church, and it's sort of like, yeah, that's fine. But now you just have a bunch of Christians in a town. How is that different than just wanting to make the church into the world, which is, I would say, yeah, great. You make the church the world. I mean, you're not going to be able to do it. But if that's your goal, great. Bring everyone into the church, as many as you can, and disciple them. That's what you're supposed to do. But that's very different than, well, I need to transform society because these other cultures have come in and they've degraded our culture as, you know, these white Europeans or whatever, which was good. It was Christian. It's like, I'm sorry, that's not true. I would actually argue that the church is such a monolithic metaculture in terms of love that it can incorporate multiple cultures within it. And it's not a matter of multiple cultures of even the town, multiple cultures because each household has its own culture.
Yeah.
Because it's in accordance with whatever father of that household. Just like the church, if you're talking, like, the church should have the culture of those fathers who are the elders, and the elders should be all about what Christ has commanded in terms of belief, what Christ has commanded in terms of ethics. And that's the culture that we get out to the community, but that's the metaculture that can incorporate all the other preferences. And then the king, he's the father of the civil realm. And so whatever, you know, if he's like, no, you can't drive 100 miles an hour in a school zone, I'm sorry, then he's got to be able to do that because he's the father of that culture. So the culture follows the father. And my fear, now they try to push back on this in this video, but my fear is that ultimately, and what we've seen, is that there really is just a moralization of preferences of the fathers, meaning the pastors of the church, upon everyone else. So because you want to make a monolithic culture across the board, not just in terms of the meta, but everything. And because of that, if someone's not doing it, they do get judged. And ironically, it counters the actual metaculture we're to cultivate as pastors, which is one of love and tolerance for other preferences, other cultural preferences within the church. That's why no man is to judge another man when it comes to whether you eat this or drink that or observe this day or that day or whatever it may be. You're not to judge one another because Christ's love can encompass the entirety of all the cultures of the world, ridding them of their sin, ridding them of their bad ethics, ridding them of false religion. That's what he does, and that's what we're to do as the church. But we're not to rid them of their cultures. It's insane. Or to even say, well, we won't rid them of their cultures, but their culture is them, and our culture is us. And we can't bring them all together into one church. You have to do that even among households.
So this is what happens when you attempt to codify the new covenant. When you attempt to make the new covenant like the old, written on tablets, here is what Christianity looks like. Here's what consistent, whatever you want to call it.
Every household has to do it.
We're going to follow it this way.
Like, because in Israel, you've got
everybody.
You've got one culture, one nation, and everybody, not only every house, but everyone in your house, even if he's a slave, even if he's a sojourner, everyone has to adopt this particular culture. And why are we told the New Testament? Because it's a shadow of what's to come, and God wants to present that picture for everyone to come. Once the body has come, though, that Christ is the substance, he's the body. He is so big and can incorporate all nations because he is the King of Kings. He is the Emperor of the world to come in all nations. And because of that, he can bring in everyone into one new man. And yet they can still be these multiple different cultures.
Now, I will say they do push back on this. They say, like, we're not talking about one field that's all corn. They use the chorus or the choir analogy. It's one song, everyone's singing different parts. So the culture is like the song, but everyone has their part to play. The problem is like, if you don't want to be a soprano, you want to be a bass. They're like, no, you need to be a soprano. Like, well, I don't want to be a soprano. I want to be, nope.
And they're gonna they talk at length about this, right? And they say, oh no, that's not what we're saying. Here's why. If I was sitting under them as a layman and I couldn't decipher, like I hadn't studied the Bible and theology and our culture and all that for so long, I would be so confused, because you want a monoculture But then you push back and be like, oh, well, Bill can become the best Bill that he is, though. He doesn't need to become like Frank or whatever it may be, whatever they said. And it's like the problem is that when you're talking about monoculture, though, then Bill does need to be like Frank. Because like Frank's household does need to look like Bill's household. You can't, otherwise it's not monolithic. It's not a monoculture then.
Yeah.
Unless you're just talking about the meta, and the meta then goes back to, okay, well then just love one another. If that's the meta, then we agree. But then how are you transforming society with, because you think that like education should look like this. They mentioned like education. I'm like, they're like, oh, well, if you're for public education, we wouldn't be for that. Well, what if you have a couple of people who are for public education?
And hey, one example of this building a monoculture is that you can't come into membership if you aren't, like, if you send your kids to public school and you're not giving them a Christian education, unless there's there are very, very few extenuating circumstances, almost always relating to someone who was sinned against in a divorce. Maybe your wife cheated on you, divorced you, and she has educational custody of the children. And so he has no custodial right of that decision. And so a parent might be doing their best with a bad place, bad situation. They could be a member.
We would still allow them in.
But someone who's willfully saying, yeah, I know that you provide a Christian, like we provide a Christian school for all of our members who tithe, and there's no tuition charge. Like, that's how committed we are. It's not that they have no options. So if someone still said, no, we're convinced that you are wrong on this. Christian education is not a requirement of a Christian parent, and public schools are a perfectly viable and lawful option for Christians today, and we're sending our kids there, we would say, thank you for applying. This isn't the place for you.
Now, we would argue you shouldn't be, but my point is what we're not for Christian education, like public schools either. Like but they're for it. We would actually push back and be like, no, that's still dividing your family, and the primary purpose should not be how academic your kids are. It should be how, like, bound they are to the family unit and all that sort of thing, and feeding into the family and building relationships with their father and mother and all that. Like, we would push back and be like, okay, well, those are different cultural elements. And it's like, but you just condemned everyone who has a particular one as, well, you wouldn't like us much because we tell you that it's bad. And it's like, okay, well, there you go. Here we go now. Now, if you connect it to morality, that's fine. And we might connect some of that to morality as well. But as soon as you start acting like, cleanliness is next to godliness, then now everyone needs to be judged according to the rule of cleanliness. As soon as you start acting like, well, everyone who is a true Christian who's like really solid, they're going to pursue, the best of whatever they're cultivating in terms of, finances. So they're going to invest a particular way or whatever. And the people who don't now are not really as responsible and really as good, and they're being judged. And again, it's just, you can't have a monoculture with having diversity in preferences, unless you're just talking about the meta.
Well, yeah, again, I think this is in principle, it sounds great. In actuality, though, as we would look into history, this is not an actionable thing that is sustainable.
Yeah,
it will fall apart eventually, because where the seed falls, Satan will get it. It'll get choked out. They'll be excited, and then it'll burn out because of persecution or whatever. Yeah. Like, there's all that. Is that parable, like, will that stop? Does that parable will it not be true before Christ returns at some point? It's always true everywhere. So in one sense, you're going to have to deal with, with you say you have a Christian town. No, you don't. You have people that are conforming to what is going to excel them. And if that means to be Christian on the outside, then so be it.
Whatever the peer group demands.
Whatever the peer group demands is fine. And maybe that makes your life easier. But, I'm sorry, you call it all whatever you want. But eventually, the minute those people think they can have the upper hand on you, that town no longer be Christian. It'll get split or whatever. It'll just go down the tubes. The other thing that I have a really big concern about is one of the things they say about their primary goals. Like, what are we doing here? And one of them was to find and cultivate leaders.
Yeah.
All right. So like, what is that? So in my mind, I'm thinking, what does that mean? Because I know in a church context what that means. That means pastors and deacons. They do mean that, because they even bring up the idea of, which I think is a good point, when you are finding men that want, that are desiring, that have that desire, and then are qualified, and you're training them, and you find that they're, hey, they speak well, they got good theology, they teach well, people, they're able to explain things. You shouldn't feel jealous about that or anything. But on the furtherance, they're not just talking about pastors and deacons. They're talking about the next generation of town leaders.
Yeah.
Right.
Start to do when you go, oh, God has salted the world with men to lead over tens and 50s and hundreds and thousands. So then you start saying, we need economic potency, institutional economic potency in this borough, if it is to grow and scale. Well, I bet God put some of those men in our church. And the pastor doesn't go, oh, it must be me. Probably not. But he does, like in our church, you could look, there's the handful of men that I would say, those are our guys at our scale who are our leader over hundreds or thousands in that sphere. And then you just throw your weight behind being for them and helping them and giving them opportunity and introducing and networking. And you just take that one example and apply it to all those other domains of life. But over time, as a community grows and scales, a Christian borough, let's say you have a couple thousand people in a Christian borough somewhere. You're probably going to find that nearly every aspect of human life, God has raised up leaders on all of those different parts of life on the different levels.
Politics. We're talking about politics. We're talking about the elite. So here's my problem. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. The idea of systems around us that we just think are baked into good creation before the fall, and the idea of elitism is amoral. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. Now, on the surface, that's true. Elitism can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But usually the elites are doing good despite their position, and they're usually kicked out because that position is not looked at as a place that you would condescend.
Yeah.
Right.
The cream doesn't usually rise to the top. It's usually taken and thrown away.
Right. All right. We're going to cut it there. Thanks for watching. If you want to support us, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike. We just need the engagement. Leave a comment.
Leave a bad comment. That'll get us on the algorithm.
Yeah. And actually, if Pastor Suve watches this, or Eric Kahn, and they want to engage, we would absolutely be open to do that. And maybe they could correct some things that we've said that are misconceptions, or we can press hard on the things that are not misconceptions.
If nothing else, correct us on how to pronounce his name. Is it Suve, Salve, Sove?
Yeah. And man, appreciate his music. Like putting the Westminster shorter or larger to song. He's got a lot of good stuff going for him. But if you want to support us further, we got a Patreon. Join, give us money. And if you give us money, you can enroll in our school for free. Just kidding.
Well, it is true. You can enroll for free because we actually don't have a school. So.
Oh yeah, right. So we are the school. We're schooling you right now.
Each individual family.
But yeah, no, it just goes towards cameras and stuff. But until next time, hopefully April will be back. But if not, it'll be the duo again. Peace out.
Bye-bye.